Gather round, fellow dreamers, for the tale of In the Trenches of Truth, brought to vivid life by the Dreamweavers at StoryWave AI. Engage with our dreams by liking, sharing, and subscribing for a new story every day. Chapter 1: The Silent War Emerges. I stood at the edge of the restricted military zone, my auburn hair a silent banner of rebellion against the evening chill. The gray eyes that had earned me the reputation of being as perceptive as an eagle scanned the area. It was a ballet of armored vehicles and hushed commands, a choreography of urgency that did not match the official silence. A figure approached, his gait familiar in the way of an old comrade. Marcus Barron, marked to those who had shared trenches with him, moved with the rugged assurance of a man who had seen the world through the lens of harsh realities. His salt and pepper hair was the testament to his years in the field, and the beard he wore seemed like a tribute to the many he had witnessed falling to the insatiable appetite of conflict. "Alex," he greeted, his voice a gruff whisper that still managed to convey warmth. "I see the scent of a story has lured you out into the night." "Mark," I responded, my tone sharp and clear, "this is more than a mere story. This is the prelude to an expose that I fear could shake the pillars of our nation." My gaze returned to the activity within the military zone. The press badges adorning my bulletproof vest felt like a meager shield against the brewing storm. "There's a silent war emerging, Mark, and I intend to bring it to light." He nodded, the weight of the camera around his neck a silent testament to his readiness to capture the unfolding drama. "I've heard murmurs, Alex, whispers that could turn into screams if what they say has substance. The night air carried a charge, the kind that precedes the roar of thunder. It was then that she appeared, materializing from the shadows as if she was a part of them. Elena Vasquez, Lena to those she trusted, which were few, stood before us, her petite frame belying the gravity she carried. Alexandra, she said, her voice sultry and low, stirring the stillness around us. There are layers to this that go deeper than you can imagine. Her dark brown eyes, sharp and calculating, met mine, and I knew that this was the informant who could guide me through the labyrinthian plot that was threatening to choke the truth. "Lena," I acknowledged with a nod, my demeanor unyielding. "I'm listening." The details she divulged were like pieces of a puzzle that I was determined to solve. As we spoke, the air between us was charged with the gravity of secrets that could alter the course of history. The conversation was a dance of revelations and inquiries, a back and forth of information that painted a picture of a nation teetering on the brink of division. We were in the trenches of truth, and the battle had just begun. With every word Lena spoke, the path became clearer, and the stakes higher. Government censorship and disinformation were the twin sentries I had to bypass to reveal the reality of the silent war that was threatening to erupt into the public consciousness. As I parted ways with Lena, the close call of our meeting was a stark reminder of the risks that lay ahead. The story I was uncovering was a juggernaut that would not be stopped easily. But as an investigative journalist, I was no stranger to the perils of the profession. I was ready to confront the barriers, to unravel the conspiracies, and to shed light on the silent war emerging from the depths of shadowed agendas. The chapter of my life that unfolded that night was one of many, but it was foundational. It was the moment when the veil began to lift, and the machinations of power started to reveal themselves to my unyielding scrutiny. The silent war emerges, and I, Alexandra Stone, am the chronicler of its truths. Chapter 2: Shadows of New America. The air buzzed with the static of uncertainty, and the faces that passed by were etched with the stories of this new reality. As I walked, I could feel the pulse of a nation in turmoil. Each heartbeat a story, each breath a whisper of the struggle for power. I had arranged to meet with a figure of authority within this new America, a man whose voice carried the weight of this emerging entity. His name was Jonathan Krieger, a name that had become synonymous with the steely determination of the new regime. The meeting place was an old library that had been repurposed as a governmental building, its hallowed halls now echoing with the sounds of a different kind of order. Jonathan stood behind a mahogany desk, the backdrop of books a silent testament to the knowledge that once flowed freely within these walls. His posture was one of command, his suit crisp and his expression unreadable. "Miss," Stone, he greeted, his voice devoid of warmth but rich with authority. You've been quite the elusive figure in our new order of things. I met his gaze, unflinching. Mr. Krieger, the people deserve to understand the motivations behind this schism. They need more than propaganda and patriotic fervor. He offered a nod, as if acknowledging the legitimacy of my quest. You seek clarity in a time of chaos, Miss Stone. It's a noble but perilous endeavor. Ask, then, what you will. Our exchange became a marathon of verbal sparring, a dance of inquiry and revelation that spanned the fading light. I probed the depths of his convictions, seeking the rationale that fueled the division of a nation. He parried with the skill of a seasoned politician, revealing just enough to paint the picture of a new America born from the ashes of dissatisfaction and the longing for a return to a perceived greatness. Jonathan's words were a mixture of idealism and calculated ambition, a narrative that spoke of restoring order through control, of resistance as a necessary evil in the pursuit of a grand vision. You must understand, Miss Stone, he said, his voice steady as the shadows grew long around us, that what we seek is a renaissance of values, a rebirth of the principles that made this nation great. There is pain in growth, there is struggle in change. I listened, my recorder a silent witness to the history being spoken, my mind parsing his rhetoric for the truth that lay beneath. I pressed him on the tales of resistance, the stories of those who clung to the idea of a united America. Resistance is the language of those who fear change, he stated, his eyes narrowing. But we are patient. We will show them the way, even if it requires a firm hand. As the night embraced the city, I left the library with a mind teeming with thoughts. The interview with Jonathan Krieger had shed light on the motivations of New America, but it had also unveiled the depth of the chasm that lay between the past and the present. Navigating through the chaos of a split nation, I was determined to uncover the stories that needed to be told. The voices of resistance, the cries for control, they were all facets of the same gem that was America. And as I delved deeper into the shadows of this new America, I knew that my journey was only just beginning. The chapter of my life continued to unfold, each step revealing more of the labyrinth that was this divided country. It was here, in the trenches of truth, that I would find the narratives that would define an era, the stories that would illuminate the shadows of New America. Chapter 3: The Deep State's Gambit. My phone buzzed, a silent herald of urgency in the quiet room. Mark's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a swift, "Talk to me." "Alex, you need to see this," he said, his tone urgent and his words clipped. "I've stumbled upon something big, something that could blow this whole story wide open." I was already grabbing my coat and keys, my instincts alive with the prospect of discovery. "Where are you?" "Meet me at the old docks in 30 minutes, he replied before hanging up. The docks were deserted when I arrived, a relic from a bygone era that whispered of secrets and trades carried out under the cover of darkness. Mark stood near the water's edge, the faint light from the distant city reflecting off his camera lens. Without a word, he handed me a USB drive, his brown eyes serious beneath furrowed brows. "This is it, Alex. Everything we've been chasing, answers, names, connections, it's all in here." As I pocketed the drive, a sudden awareness of our exposure washed over me. The stakes were high, and our investigation had surely attracted the gaze of those who preferred their deeds to remain in the shadows. "We need to be careful," I cautioned, my voice barely above a whisper. "Eyes and ears are everywhere." Mark nodded, and we parted ways, each of us slipping back into the night from whence we came. Back in the safety of my apartment, I inserted the drive and watched as files upon files cascaded onto my screen. Classified documents, covert communications, financial transactions, all the pieces of a grand and treacherous design laid bare before me. The hours ticked by as I delved into the cache of secrets. The lines connecting the dots became clearer, a web of influence and manipulation that reached the highest echelons of power. Then, a soft knock at the door shattered the silence. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see Lena's silhouette in the hallway. Opening the door, I ushered her in quickly. "Lena, this isn't a good time." "I know, but I couldn't wait," she said, her dark eyes scanning the room. "They're on to you, Alex. Your investigation is stirring the nest, and they're not happy." I felt a chill despite the warmth of my apartment. How much time do I have? Days, maybe less, she replied. You need to publish what you found, get it out into the world before they can stop you. Her words echoed in my mind as I returned to the screen. The story was taking shape, a narrative of corruption and ambition that threatened the very pillars of our democracy. But with each word I typed, I could feel the noose of danger tightening around my neck. The chapter of my life known as the Deep State's Gambit was a treacherous one, fraught with peril and shadowed figures that lurked just beyond the light. But as dawn broke over the horizon, casting its first rays upon a world oblivious to the machinations that moved just beneath its surface, I knew that I held the key to shedding light on the darkness. The truth was my weapon, the pen my sword, and I would wield them with the precision and determination of a warrior in the trenches of truth. The Deep State's Gambit would not go unchallenged, not on my watch. Chapter 4: Alliances Forged in Secret. A chilly wind swept through the abandoned warehouse district as I made my way to the agreed-upon meeting spot. The rendezvous was risky, the kind that could spark international turmoil if mishandled, but the potential to uncover the global machinations at play was too great to ignore. As I approached the derelict building, the faint hum of a distant generator was the only indication that I was not alone. Inside, the air was thick with the mustiness of neglect, yet it was clear this place had recently been repurposed for something far more clandestine than storage. He was already there, Victor, a shadowy envoy whose connections threaded through the Kremlin's inner circles. His presence here was as bold as it was alarming, and his sharp features were accentuated by the single bulb dangling above us. "Miss Stone," he greeted, his voice a careful blend of Russian accentuation and practiced diplomacy. "You understand the gravity of this meeting." I nodded, my recorder discreetly set to capture every syllable. "I am fully aware, Victor. Let's not dance around niceties. Tell me about the alliances." He surveyed the room before speaking, the weight of empires in his gaze. "Russia's interests align with those of New America," he began, each word measured. "We seek stability and a return to national pride. It is the same with India, with Israel. We are all nations looking to reclaim our narratives from a world that pushes for homogeneity." My mind raced as I processed the implications. The support of such powerful nations could tip the scales in the conflict back home, legitimizing the schism and potentially escalating the war. "And what of the United States?" I pressed. "The old America?" Victor's lips curved into a rueful half-smile. "America is divided. It is no longer the singular superpower it once was. Our support for New America is an investment in a future order, one we can shape." The conversation stretched on, hours passing as we dissected the geopolitical chessboard. The alliance was not just military. It was economic, technological, ideological. It was a new axis being formed, born from the silent war that had fractured my home. As the first light of dawn filtered through the broken windows, Victor handed me a dossier. "Proof," he said simply. I left the warehouse with a treasure trove of information and a mind teeming with strategy and speculation. This was the story of the century, a tale of alliances forged in secret, of a world order on the cusp of dramatic change. My exploration into the deep-seated global politics was a tightrope walk above an abyss of potential disaster. The slightest misstep, a word out of place, and I could trigger an international incident with repercussions beyond my imagination. But the pen is mightier than the sword, and my weapon was the truth. With it, I would illuminate the dark corners of these alliances, expose the covert support that fueled the war's progression, and reveal the powers that sought to redraw the boundaries of influence and control. In the trenches of truth, there was no room for fear, only the unyielding drive to bring to light what was hidden. This chapter of my life, Alliances Forged in Secret, would be one of revelation and consequence, a narrative that would alter the world's understanding of the silent war that raged in the shadows. Chapter 5: Voices from the Trenches. Mark was at my side, his camera lens fixated on the unfolding devastation. The air was thick with dust and acrid smoke, making it hard to breathe, to see, to think beyond the immediate need to document the moment. "Alex, are you getting all this?" he shouted over the din of battle, his words barely cutting through the chaos. "Yes," I yelled back, my voice hoarse. "Keep your head down." A young soldier darted past us, his uniform stained with the evidence of the day's fighting. I caught his arm, beckoning him to share his story amid the bedlam. "What's your name, soldier?" I asked, raising my voice to be heard over the incessant gunfire. "Jackson, ma'am," he replied, his rifle clutched close to his chest. "Private Jackson." "Tell me, Jackson," I persisted, my recorder poised to capture his words. "What's driving you through this hell?" He paused, casting a weary glance back at the fray. "Hope, ma'am," he said, his voice a mixture of fatigue and resolve. "Hope that there's something worth fighting for on the other side of all this." His words were a poignant reminder of the individual lives caught in the crossfire of ideologies and power struggles. Jackson moved on, disappearing into the smog of war, leaving behind a tale of bravery wrapped in the simplicity of his hope. As the battle raged, we ducked into the relative safety of a shelled-out building. Civilians huddled together, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Among them was a woman, her arms wrapped protectively around a pair of young children. Her name was Maria, and her story was etched in the lines of worry that marred her once youthful face. "We were just living our lives," she shared, her voice trembling with the effort to remain composed. "Then one day we woke up, and the fight was at our doorstep. We don't want this war. We want peace, safety for our kids." Her narrative was one among many, a mosaic of desperation and the will to survive. The voices from the trenches, from the very heart of the conflict, were clamoring to be heard, each a covenant to the true cost of the divisiveness that had ripped through the nation. An explosion nearby shook the building, showering us with debris. Mark and I exchanged a glance, a silent agreement that we were witnessing the raw truth of war, the human face behind the strategic maneuvers and political rhetoric. The night drew in, bringing a temporary lull to the fighting. We used the respite to venture further, seeking more stories, more truths. Each encounter was a brushstroke on the canvas of conflict, a personal narrative that, when woven together, formed a hodgepodge of adaptability and sorrow. The emotional toll of bearing witness to such suffering and heroism was immense. Yet as the dawn began to break, casting a pale light over the scarred cityscape, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why I was here, why Mark and I risked everything to be on the front lines. The voices from the trenches needed to be amplified. The personal stories of soldiers and civilians alike needed to be told. Their truths, their experiences, were the threads that would eventually stitch together a narrative of hope or a eulogy of despair for a nation at war with itself. In the trenches of truth, every voice mattered. Every story was a piece of the puzzle that the world needed to see, and I, Alexandra Stone, would ensure they were not lost in the chaos. Chapter 6: Betrayals Within. Today, I was to meet with Colonel Hayes, a high-ranking official within New America's military, known for his ironclad loyalty to the cause. But rumors had surfaced, whispers of betrayal that could upend the already delicate balance of power. My mission was to seek the veracity behind these claims, to peel back the layers of deceit shrouding the resistance. The rendezvous point was a secluded coffee shop that had somehow survived the chaos. The windows were boarded, but inside the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans battled against the scent of damp and decay. Hayes sat in a corner booth, his posture rigid, the lines of his uniform sharp and unforgiving. "Colonel Hayes," I greeted, extending my hand. He took it, his grip firm and unyielding. "Alexandra Stone," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "Let's get down to it, shall we?" The conversation between us was a chess match. Each question I posed was met with a calculated response, each answer a move that could either reveal or obscure his true intentions. "You've been accused of treason," I said, my tone even, eyes locked on his, "of sharing classified information with those who stand against New America." Hayes's expression was stoic, but there was a flicker, a brief dance of something, anxiety, across his face. "Accusations are the weapons of the weak," he retorted. "My loyalty to our cause is absolute." Yet, as we talked, the pieces did not fall into place as they should. His words, though vehement, lacked the conviction I had expected. It was as if he were performing a rehearsed play, and I was an audience of one. The interview was abruptly cut short by the sound of commotion outside. Shouts filled the air, the staccato rhythm of running feet approaching. Hayes's eyes darted to the window, then back to me. "They've come for me," he whispered. the facade of control crumbling. In an instant, he was on his feet, his hand gripping my arm. You need to see this through, Alexandra. The truth, it's deeper than you know. We spilled into the street, a perilous chase unfolding as we dodged between alleyways and overturned cars. The pursuit was relentless, the hunters behind us shadows with voices like thunder. As we ran, Hayes spoke in bursts, revealing fragments of a narrative rife with deception. It's not just me, he panted. There are others within the ranks, within the government. The betrayal runs deep. Trust had become a luxury I could no longer afford, and yet, in the madness of the chase, I had to rely on this man whose allegiance was questioned by all. The very fabric of the resistance was tearing, and with each revelation from Hayes, I saw a new pattern emerge, a different story to be told. Our flight came to an abrupt end in a deserted warehouse, the husk of industry long gone. Hayes faced me, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with a fervor that only the truly desperate possess. Document this, Alexandra, he urged, pressing a small drive into my hand. The evidence is all there. It will redefine the war, the country, everything. And then he was gone, a specter retreating into the belly of the city, leaving me alone with a truth that was as dangerous as it was necessary. The chapter of my life titled Betrayals Within was a witness to the fragility of trust and the potency of deceit. As I clutched the drive, the weight of responsibility bore down on me. I was the chronicler of this new chapter in our nation's history, the scribe who would unravel the tangled web of loyalties that had ensnared us all. In the trenches of truth, betrayal was a currency that bought both power and peril. The stakes had never been higher, and as the sun crept higher in the sky, casting long shadows over the ruins around me, I knew that my journey was far from over. The war's narrative was shifting, and I was at its epicenter. Chapter 7, The Opposition Strikes Back. Good evening to our viewers at home, began the moderator, her voice a practiced lilt that belied the gravity of the debate to come. Tonight we delve into a topic that has divided our nation, the silent war within America's borders. With us is Alexandra Stone, whose recent exposés on the subject have shaken the very foundations of our political discourse. The camera's red light blinked on, a silent sentinel as millions of eyes turned to watch. Sutherland fixed me with a gaze both icy and calculating. Miss Stone, he started, his voice smooth as silk, your allegations are quite serious. Yet could it be that in your quest for truth you've become myopic, blind to the realities of national security and the necessary actions therein? I met his gaze evenly, allowing a moment to collect my thoughts before responding. Mr. Sutherland, the truth is not subjective to one's view of national security. It is indisputable that the deep state, as you represent, has manipulated events to its own ends, regardless of the democratic process. The moderator interjected, her words a thread weaving the conversation together. But surely, Miss Stone, there must be room for state secrets in the interest of public safety? There is a chasm, I countered, between public safety and the orchestration of a war that serves to entrench power rather than protect citizens. Sutherland chuckled, a low sound that resonated with condescension. Ah, but every action has its place in the grand chessboard of global politics. Are you suggesting we lay bare our strategies to our adversaries? The adversarial relationship you speak of, I shot back, has been fostered by the very conflicts your faction has engineered. Transparency is not weakness. It is the cornerstone of democratic trust. The debate raged on, a cascade of argument and counterargument, each of us parrying with the precision of fencers. Sutherland was adept at spinning webs of rhetoric, lacing half-truths with persuasive language designed to obfuscate and charm. Yet, with each verbal thrust, I unveiled more of the deep state's gambits, laying out my evidence, a patchwork of facts and testimonies that could not be easily dismissed. And what of the alliances you claim exist? Sutherland pressed, leaning forward. Where is the concrete proof that these are not simply the strategies of sovereign nations acting independently? I reached into my briefcase, pulling out a sheaf of documents, the fruits of my laborious investigation. Here, Mr. Sutherland, are the communiques, the financial records, the undeniable links that bind these alliances in shadowed complicity. The moderator took the papers, her eyes scanning the content before holding them up for the camera to see. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears Miss Stone has brought evidence to support her claims. This indeed warrants further examination. As the debate came to a close, the studio lights dimmed, and the weight of the night settled around me. The opposition had struck back, but I had held my ground. The journalistic integrity and factual basis of my findings had been tested before a public that hungered for the spectacle of truth. This chapter of my life, The Opposition Strikes Back, was a corroboration to the power of words and the stamina required to wield them in pursuit of what was right. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights glittered like distant stars, a reminder that the universe was vast and the search for truth never-ending. In the trenches of truth, I was a soldier armed with facts, and my campaign had only just begun. Chapter 8, Unveiling the Illusion. The digital clock on the wall flickered 2:03 a.m. The night was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that feels like the calm before a storm. A soft ping from my laptop broke the stillness, signaling the arrival of an encrypted message. Cipher was punctual, a ghost in the machine, their identity shrouded in layers of code and shadow. I decrypted the message, my screen illuminating a face that was not Cipher's, a face recognized the world over. The video began to play, and the well-known visage of a prominent leader filled the frame. But the words that spilled out were not the rallying cries or the polished speeches the public was accustomed to. They were admissions, confessions of falsehoods peddled to the masses, a script of deceit authored by the very hands that claimed to lead. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the gravity of what I had just witnessed. This was the smoking gun, the irrefutable proof that would strip away the veneer of legitimacy from those who sought to control through lies. The door to the room creaked open, and Marcus entered, his presence a silent question. "You got something?" he asked, his camera hanging like a loyal companion at his side. "It's big," I replied, gesturing to the screen. "Watch this." We reviewed the footage together, the two of us a solitary audience to a performance that would soon captivate the world. The leader's words echoed off the barren walls, each syllable a nail in the coffin of the grand illusion that had been so meticulously crafted. "This changes everything," Marcus said, his gruff voice betraying a hint of incredulity. "We need to get this out there, fast." But the dissemination of truth had become a battlefield in itself. The airwaves and data streams were choked with the miasma of fake news and propaganda, a relentless assault on the minds of the citizenry. For every fact I unearthed, a dozen fictions sprang up in its place, hydra-headed and virulent. I knew the risks. To unveil the illusion would be to invite the full wrath of those whose empires were built on sand and smoke. Yet the truth was a clarion call that could not be unheeded. "Let's prepare the release," I said, determination stealing my voice. "The public deserves to know." The hours that followed were a blur of activity. I crafted the narrative, piecing together the evidence with the meticulousness of a surgeon. Marcus prepared a visual compendium, his images a stark complement to the leader's damning admissions. As dawn crept over the horizon, we were ready. The article, accompanied by the video, was a missile aimed directly at the heart of the disinformation machine. With a single click, the truth soared out into the digital ether, an unyielding torch in the darkness of deceit. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Social media erupted into a frenzy, the populace grappling with the revelations that upended their understanding of the conflict. The factions scrambled to respond, their machinations laid bare for all to see. In the trenches of truth, the battle raged on, but the unveiling of the illusion marked a turning point. A crucial discovery had been made, and its ripples would be felt across the political landscape for years to come. Sitting amidst the stacks of books and the echoes of a world that once valued fact over fiction, I felt the weight of my role as a guardian of reality. The war was far from over, but for now, the truth had won a decisive victory. Chapter 9, Last Stand for Truth. Marcus had set up the equipment with the precision of a seasoned tech operative, his every movement deliberate. The camera was our cannon, and the lens was aimed squarely at the heart of deception. "You ready, Alex?" Marcus's voice was steady, but I caught the slight edge of urgency in it. I nodded, positioning myself before the camera. "Let's do this." The red light flicked on, and I was live, broadcasting to a nation perched on the precipice of change. "Citizens," I began, my voice cutting through the static of uncertainty. "Tonight, I stand before you, not just as a journalist, but as a fellow American. We stand at a crossroads, where the choices we make will echo through the journal of history. A screen behind me displayed the evidence, a mosaic of leaked documents, encrypted communications, financial records, all pointing to the corruption gnawing at the pillars of our democracy. As you cast your votes, know this, I continued, my staunchness hardening with each word. The forces that seek to sway the direction of our country are not invincible. They bleed lies, and we are the tourniquet. The broadcast was a symphony of revelations, each note struck with the hammer of fact and the chisel of integrity. I laid out the alliances, the betrayals within, the manipulative tactics, all the threads woven into the welter of this silent war. The studio door burst open mid-sentence, and Lena rushed in, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. They're shutting us down, Alex. You've got minutes at best. Keep rolling, I commanded, an undercurrent of defiance in my tone. She nodded, taking her place behind another camera, her presence a silent pillar of support. I turned back to the lens, my every word a soldier marching forth into battle. The truth is a warning signal, and tonight we light the flame. Let it guide your decision. Let it shape our future. As the minutes waned, I could feel the walls of the establishment closing in, their shadowy tendrils reaching to snuff out the light of revelation. But the truth would not be contained. It cascaded into the ether, a deluge of reality crashing against the dam of deceit. The screen flickered, a warning of the impending blackout, but my voice did not waver. Do not let this moment pass unseized. The last stand for truth is now within each of you. With a final surge of power, the broadcast cut to black, the message sent, the die cast. As Marcus, Lena, and I gathered the evidence and prepared to evacuate, the weight of what had transpired hung in the air, a palpable force. Time had been our adversary, but we had made every second count. This was the penultimate chapter, last stand for truth, and as we slipped into the shadows of an uncertain night, we knew that the dawn would bring a world that had been irrevocably altered by our hands. In the trenches of truth, the final battle had been waged, and though the outcome remained to be seen, one thing was certain. The echo of our defiance would resonate long after the dust had settled. Chapter 10. Election Day, Reckoning. As I, Alexandra, made my way to the polling station, the streets were a patchwork of fervent discussions and silent contemplations. The polling station itself, a local high school gymnasium, had been transformed into the crucible of democracy. Volunteers moved with a sense of purpose, their faces etched with the seriousness of the task at hand. Alexandra Stone, a voice called out as I entered the gym. I turned to see Marcus, his camera suspended from his neck, the lines on his face telling of nights spent in tireless vigil. Marcus, I greeted him, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within me. This is it, the reckoning. He nodded, his brown eyes scanning the room. The country is at a tipping point. Your revelations have stirred the pot, Alex. People are waking up, but there's no telling which way the scales will tip. We found our way to a quiet corner, where the buzz of the gym faded into a dull roar. Here, the walls adorned with championship banners seemed to watch over us, silent witnesses to history in the making. Whatever happens today, Marcus began, his voice a low rumble. You've done more than most to shine a light on the shadows. That's got to count for something. I considered his words, the weight of my actions, the endless nights sifting through evidence, the faces of those who had whispered their secrets, in the hope of preserving something greater than themselves. It has to, I replied, the determination that had fueled my journey hardening into resolve. Truth is the bedrock of our society. Without it, we're building on quicksand. The day stretched on, the lines at the polls waxing and waning like the tides. Lena joined us, her presence a reminder of the intricacies of the war that raged beyond sight. The people are speaking, she said, her eyes reflecting the gravity of the moment. But will their voices be enough to turn the tide? It was a question none of us could answer. As dusk approached, the gymnasium emptied, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the whispers of a day that would be etched in history. When the results began to pour in, we gathered around a small television in the gym's office. The anchors spoke of a nation divided, of margins too close to call, of a future hanging in the balance. As the final tallies were announced, it became clear. The truth, my truth, had resonated with more souls than I could have hoped. The election was swayed, not by the machinations of shadowy cabals or foreign alliances, but by the will of the people, armed with the knowledge they deserved. The nation had chosen a path, one veering away from the precipice of tyranny and towards the light of transparency and accountability. It was a victory, not just for me, but for every citizen who had dared to hope, to fight, to stand in the trenches of truth alongside us. The gymnasium was silent now, the banners above us swaying gently in the wake of departing footsteps. Marcus, Lena, and I stood together, a trio bound by the journey we had undertaken. Outside, the night sky had cleared, revealing a welter of stars. It was a canvas of infinite wonder, a universe of possibilities that mirrored the potential of the nation below. In this moment of quiet victory, the world seemed to hold its breath, the scars of war and deceit healing under the balm of a truth revealed. And as we stepped out into the cool embrace of the evening, the future unfurled before us, a road paved with the promise of a new dawn, one where the truth would no longer languish in the trenches, but stand tall in the light of day. This was Election Day, reckoning, the final chapter, the closing of an arduous volume. And as the stars twinkled above, bearing witness to the silent wonder of a world in transition, I knew that the story was far from over. But for now, the truth had prevailed, and that was a beginning. The final chapter has closed. We're delighted you spent this time with us on In the Trenches of Truth. StoryWave.ai brings your prompts to life, creating stories that resonate. Don't forget to hit like, share with friends, and subscribe for daily doses of storytelling magic. March 2024. Until next time.